Hello everyone, and welcome to another puzzle challenge video from chessuniversity.com. This is Ryan Murphy presenting the third puzzle of this week, and we're still in our beginner difficulty category, so this one's for an intended audience of, I would say, players under 1,000, as we usually start the week with. And this game comes to us from a blitz game on chess.com, played between an unranked player and an 1800 with the black pieces. White did end up winning this game, but there's a very nice opportunity here for Black to actually win the game on the spot. So a really nice tactical shot for Black to win. That's our puzzle for the day from this position, so Black to play. If you can spot the best move for Black, make sure you make a comment on the website. I'll leave the link in the description so you guys can check that out. As I usually do, I want to start from the beginning and show how we got to this position. This is move 37 of the game, and I can say that in the game, Black played the move king takes d4 and ended up losing on move 56. So king takes d4, as a hint, is not the best move, even though it is a sort of free pawn. White would still be up material after this and with a good position. So let's go to the beginning and see how we got here. This game actually began as a French defense. We haven't seen too many of these on the channel so far or on the website. And White opts for the Tarrasch, which is knight d2. One of the main points historically is that knight c3, bishop b4 is allowed with this pin, which is a whole branch of theory. Knight d2 intends to eliminate this as an option for Black, because now c3 would obviously be very good for White, kicking the bishop back and gaining a tempo, and also supporting the center sort of for free. So that's one of the main ideas of knight d2. Downside, of course, is the bishop's blocked in, so development might be a bit slower. Black goes c5, which is the typical move to strike against the d4 pawn. White takes, this is all theory, and then gives a check. I don't think that's the most common move in this position, but it's not too bad. Knight c6 played, knight g to f3, queen e7 check, which in general is a bit of a clunky move to play in the opening if there's nothing concrete to follow it up with, mostly because the bishop on f8 is blocked as a result. White goes for the queen trade. I think bishop e2 might offer more in the way of an advantage, because after queen e2, Black can kind of fix their mistake by swapping the queens, and then their bishop's able to come out. But okay, that's what happens. So takes. Also interesting that they didn't take with the bishop, but I guess they really wanted this pin. So they're being consistent with king takes. Knight f6 was played, dc5, which strikes me as a very strange move, helping Black develop this bishop sort of for free. Then knight b3 with tempo, bishop back to b6, bishop to g5, knight to e4, attacking the bishop, trying to win the bishop pair, bishop back to e3, and the bishops were exchanged. Taking with the pawn is pretty ugly. I mean, if your king's already going for a walk, why not continue with king takes e3 and keep the pawn structure together? That makes a bit more sense, I think. But fe3 was played. Now both sides have some weak pawns. Bishop e6, Black completes their development. Rook a d1, and then we've reached this queenless middle game position where Black's got the IQP, but White has this weakness on e3 potentially. a6, bishop d3, long castle, knight to d4, and a pair of knights were exchanged on the d4 square. It's definitely possible, and at least interesting to consider taking back with the pawn here, in which case White would end up with a slightly better structure, though after a move like f6, or like, centralizing this rook e8 also is reasonable, where this knight now can't come in. It's probably roughly even. I don't think either side has a major advantage there. But White keeps the structure as it is. Knight c5. Black brings the last piece in, and now, unfortunately for Black, if they don't want to lose a pawn, they have to take fe6, which then opens up the rook on the f-file. Now, of course, rook takes would allow this pawn to drop. Also, there'd be bishop f5, so there'd be a lot of problems with this move. Okay, so pawn takes. Yeah, and here rook f7 was played by White. Good question for you guys might be, why didn't White try to go after this pawn on h7? It looks free, but there's a downside to this. If you can already spot it, good job. But the downside of this is after rook h8, Black's going to be regaining this pawn down here on h2 after the bishop moves, and that rook's going to be very active as a result. So it's possible, but not ideal for White. So rook f7, rook d7, pair of rooks get swapped. I think it would be a bit more prudent to try to hold on to the file, fight for the open file, but they exchange the rooks. And now c4, trying to open the position. King c6, takes, and now white goes after that pawn. As I mentioned earlier, rook h8, and rook takes h2, bishop h3. White was probably thinking that they should be happy about this because now this rook is actually trapped, and if black's not careful, it could actually be picked up by a king march. So yeah, a little bit of care is required now for black. Knight e4 played. That takes away those squares from the king. Rook e1, pawn to g5, threatening to play the move g4. And then after bishop takes, rook takes g2 check would free the rook. Okay, so king f3 prevents that idea. And now white actually has a decent position, mostly because the rook on h2 is out of play. Okay, rook c1, b6, b4, b5, a3, so everything on the queen side gets locked up. King to e5, centralizing the king. White invades. Now white's clearly better, because the rook's obviously much better than the black rook. There's pressure against this base of this pawn chain over here. And there are really no immediate threats for black either, so this is already pretty dangerous for black. Knight d6 was played. White picks up the pawn. And now really black takes a good opportunity here to get the rook out. So rook h1 trying to swing it into the game. King to g4, attacking the pawn. Knight e4 defending. And king h5 potentially trying to come around the back. d4 was played, breaking up, just trying to get an avenue for the king. This king needs to get active, so it can maybe try to go after this pawn on a3. Rook e6 check played. King d5, and after e takes d4, which is actually a really big mistake, if we back up here, I think already this position is probably lost because the threat that exists is very difficult to dodge. I mean, they could try to move the rook away, but after this, I see a very difficult future for white in terms of trying to prevent the queen coming down to e1. So yeah, already it's a big trouble because black's trying to create a passed pawn, and if you take this pawn, which is what happened in the game, there's a tactical problem, and if you don't take the pawn will queen. So I think already the check on e6 was a decisive mistake. So anyway, this is our key moment. It's once again black to play and win. Hopefully you guys can find it. Check out the official post on chessuniversity.com, and if you get it right before we post the solution tomorrow, you can get reward points credited towards your account. So hope you guys check it out, and I'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks.